And how special that every single community in New York has a place for people to learn and gather together. And New York State Library has 20 million items. That makes us one of the largest research libraries in the whole country. And it's such a pleasure and honor to be able to create this shared history, not just of New York, but really of the entire country and in many ways the entire world. And of course, I love books and I love stories and the ways that they help any single person have many doors open to an entire world. And those are the kinds of things that I think I love about baseball too. So the ways that baseball brings people together, that makes us part of a collective story. And I'm so grateful that John joined us tonight to talk about the ways that that story is New York's story. So before I call John up, I'm gonna introduce, sorry, I have to pull out the reading glasses for this, but I'm gonna welcome Steve Loughman, who will moderate the Q&A after the lecture. Steve is the curator of sports history, the first in the history of the New York State Museum. He's also in charge of the State Museum's offsite storage facility, and he's gonna curate our conversation after John's talk. And now I'd like to welcome John Thorn. John Thorn is the official historian of Major League Baseball. He presents on the history of baseball in New York City from its earliest days through 1962, highlighting the city's love affair with the game. And it will be, I think, a wonderful evening. So come on up, John.
As I said to Lauren, I will dispense with thank yous for fear of missing someone. I have loved baseball all my life, from flipping cards against the apartment house stoop in the Bronx, to following the Brooklyn Dodgers, to awaiting their return forlornly. I thought they were taking a holiday. And then to loving the Mets. I was always more a fan than a player. My youthful trail was a twisty one. The course of true love ne'er did run smooth, with scholarly and editorial stops along the way. These led to my writing the first of many baseball books a half-century ago, to becoming a talking head in various media, and for 15 years now, serving as Major League Baseball's official historian. It is good to be an old boy, still caring about the things that animated me so long ago. Baseball in New York may best be understood as a love story, marked by courtship, romance, breakup, and reconciliation. But its greatest feature is that, like America itself, our game has welcomed outsiders, allowing them to connect with something larger than themselves. In this, baseball's love story parallels my own. I began life in a displaced persons camp in occupied Germany, born to Polish Jews who had survived the Holocaust. My birth, 2 days after Jackie Robinson's debut with Brooklyn, was to be their revenge against Hitler. When I came to America at 2.5, I was a stranger in a strange land. Baseball was the beacon for my becoming an American. As an immigrant, I attached my hopes to the Dodgers, champions of the underdog and the homeless. You'll reflect that the Brooklyn Dodgers symbol was a bum. As early as 1871, the first year of professional league play, a Jew had played alongside a Cuban for the Haymakers of Troy, just across the river from Albany. Before then, amateurs, their motive for play lurks in their name, for amat is Latin for love, had gravitated to baseball for the pure joy of it. For farm boys driven to the city by prospects of employment, the idea of a park within the city seemed nostalgic. It still does. In our years as a British colony, all the way up to the Civil War, cricket was the national pastime, both for mother country and its offspring. Records reveal a match between Londoners and New Yorkers in 1751, and another great contest in Brooklyn in 1779. Brooklyn was a separate city until 1898, when Greater New York came to include the boroughs beyond Manhattan. The evolution of intricate rules for cricket, opportunity for wagers, made the imported game seem worthy of attention by adults, while baseball, played under a variety of regional norms, was a game for kids. Baseball's first appearance in print by that name occurs in a children's book, John Newbery's Little Pretty Pocketbook, published in England in 1744, which contains a woodcut showing boys playing baseball and a rhymed description of the game. Hugh Gain, a New York printer, brought out this same book in 1762. His book does not survive, but an Americanized version by Isaiah Thomas of Worcester, published in 1787, does. After the Revolution, the playing of baseball in New York began in documented form in 1805. Two clubs from Columbia College, the Gymnastics and the Sons of Diagoras, played a bat and ball game they called base, spelled B-A-C-E. The new sport was an American game that could challenge not only boys, but also young men. Slowly, this game would take its place in the life of our nation across all social strata, as cricket had done for the upper class in England. Did Americans toss cricket aside in a hatred for all things English? Yes, baseball seemed somehow patriotic. Men played the new game on Broadway and 8th Street, then at Madison Square Park in the next decade. Clubs sprang up, including the Gothams and the Knickerbockers, and then such Brooklyn clubs as the Atlantics and Excelsiors. Rules were published in booklets that improbably survive and are treasures of the early game. These men cavorted not in New York, where the march of industry had overtaken their playing grounds, but in Hoboken or Brooklyn or Westchester. Enhanced skills led to under-the-table payments for the best players, yet amateurism remained the ostensible watchword. In 1869, the openly professional Cincinnati Red Stockings took on all comers, including the best in the East, winning all their games. A circuit of paid players was the next logical step, and it was founded on St. Patrick's Day, 1871, in a saloon on Lower Broadway. That National Association of Professional Baseball Players broke up and was swiftly succeeded by a second league, marked by a different structure, investor-capitalized clubs that negotiated salaries with players. The National League, founded on February 2nd, 1876, at the Grand Central Hotel, survives today and marks the beginning of Major League Baseball. It has become a model for all professional leagues across all sports. Prophetically, in November 1949, I spent my first night in my new land at this hotel. Having established baseball as a New York game, let's do a racehorse run through its story. Unlike its predecessor, the new National League was guided by principle to its detriment. When the New York Mutuals and Philadelphia Athletics, charter members of the National League, failed to play out their road schedules, both franchises were expelled, to their surprise. Struggling through its next few seasons without representation in the nation's two largest cities, the league nearly crashed as clubs were stationed in such unpromising outlets as Syracuse, Indianapolis, and Milwaukee. No offense to the current Brewers. In 1879, the first ballpark on Manhattan Island was built not for a league team, but for the Ladies Athletic Association, two teams of blonde and brunette baseballists who played in bloomers and short skirts for the lust, if not love, of male spectators. Their park, reserved for women at play, went up at 59th and Madison, near the present site of Bloomingdale's. This year also marked the presence of the first African American in what would become known as MLB. William Edward White, a student at Brown University who was substituting for the Providence Grays' regular first baseman, became the first African American by my lights. Some will say it's Moses Fleetwood Walker, some will say it's Jackie Robinson. I maintain it's William Edward White, whose father was a slaveholder, whose mother was a slave. Black Americans had played baseball for their own clubs since the 1850s in the Weeksville section of Brooklyn, then against white clubs in the 1860s, and after a brief period of racial integration, once again on teams of their own. Before the 1883 campaign, the league canceled its multi-year commitments to Worcester and Troy and replaced them with Philadelphia and New York, restoring the constituents of 1876. The former club was the Phillies. The latter soon became known as the Giants. A rival big league, the American Association, welcomed the New York Metropolitans, or Mets, previously a touring club who shared the original Polo Grounds, which were at 5th Avenue and 110th Street with the Giants. We think of the Polo Grounds as being across the Harlem River from Yankee Stadium, but no, the first Polo Grounds was at 5th Avenue and 110th, just north of Central Park. Brooklyn, too, had a professional team in the Interstate League, playing at Washington Park, which enclosed the old stone house made famous in the Revolutionary War. In 1884, Brooklyn would join that rival big league, joining the New York Mets, who, in baseball's first World Series, I just argued about this with Sarah Langs on Twitter. Baseball's first World Series, the Mets lost to Providence. By 1886, the Mets had moved to Staten Island, where spectators at their lavish new ballpark were able to see the Statue of Liberty being assembled. These Mets disappeared after the 1887 season. One may wonder to what extent the 1962 club was named for them. The 80s were a glorious time for baseball in New York. Love was in bloom. In 1888, DeWolf Hopper recited Casey at the Bat publicly for the first of, by his counting, 10,000 times. In 1889, at a Delmonico's banquet for Albert Spaulding's returning world tourists, Mark Twain declared that the game was the very symbol of the raging, tearing, booming 19th century. Also in that year, the Dodgers lost their first World Series, of many, until 1955. In 1890, there were three major leagues: the National, the American Association, and the Players' League, born of a salary dispute and a rupture of trust in who would best manage the future of the game, players or magnates. The Players' League giants played in what was to become known as the Uptown Polo Grounds, while the National League giants played at the adjoining Manhattan Field. The two parks were separated by a fence of canvas stretched over wood, and in one notable instance, a home run hit in one ballpark landed in the other. In 1891, the Players' League, in truth controlled by industrialists and not the players, went up in smoke. The old Giants moved into the Players' League ballpark. It would be their ancestral site until 1958. After destroying both its rivals, the National League should have exulted in triumph. But in fact, it was left as a bloated 12-team monopoly that struggled to survive amid the rise of college football and bicycling and increasing levels of rowdyism and leather-lunged swearing that kept the ladies away. Gentlemen and the ladies who had accompanied them to the ballparks were horrified. Undeterred fans like Frank B. Wood, who greeted fine plays and bad ones with a whoop of well, 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 were hard on the ears. Later on, that would be true of Hilda Chester's cowbell at Ebbets Field. Lovebirds can be noisy. Brooklyn and New York both had teams in the expanded circuit, which permitted only one champion. New York and Brooklyn continued as big league entrants when this solitary league contracted from 12 teams to 8 in 1900. Thus setting the stage for the creation of a major rival, the American League, which debuted in 1901 without a New York entry, though its founder, Ban Johnson, devoutly wished one. In 1902, the Baltimore Orioles exploded in mid-July, unable to field a team and forfeiting their franchise to the American League. After securing other players for Baltimore so it could play out the schedule, Johnson had opened a slot for New York, much as the Giants had come to New York when the National League ended its stay in Troy. This team, soon to be known as the Yankees, debuted as the Greater New Yorks in 1903. In the press, it was nicknamed the Highlanders or Hilltoppers for the location of their northern Manhattan ballpark on a rise overlooking the Hudson River. National Leaguers called them the Invaders. That was John McGraw's special name for them. But before long, they saw how a rival might spark fans' ardor, as it had done in the 1880s. In 1905 came what I view as the first World Series between the American League and the National League. Following a peace agreement between the leagues that stopped player raids of the older league by the newer one, John McGraw's Giants defeated Connie Mack's Philadelphia Athletics. Christy Mathewson, already the idol of the nation, threw 3 shutouts. The postseason championship of 1903, generally called the first World Series, including by Major League Baseball, had reflected only an agreement between clubs, not between leagues. Joining Casey at the bat as a baseball icon in 1908 is Take Me Out to the Ball Game. Katie Casey was baseball mad, had the fever and had it bad. In this great, and I'll spare you the rest. In this great decade for the game, women returned to the ballparks after the crude, rude 1890s had driven them away. Like the 1888 Ballad of the Republic, the song inspired magic lantern shows, sing-alongs, silent films, and endless memorabilia. Also in this crazy 8, Fred Merkle failed to touch second base in a September game, costing the Giants a pennant. And baseball anointed Abner Doubleday as its inventor, despite, within a year, advocates springing up for Alexander Cartwright, who 30 years later got a plaque in Cooperstown's Hall of Fame. Doubleday, however, got the building and a national celebration. In the 1910s, many barnstorming all-black clubs. Well, the laughter is prompted by the Wheaties box, no doubt, which was a symbol of celebrity then. In the 1910s, many barnstorming all-black clubs, the Cuban Giants, the Lincoln Giants, the Brooklyn Royal Giants, and so on, survived and even thrived, prompting Rube Foster to establish the Negro National League in 1920. 100 years later, MLB would embrace 7 Negro leagues as majors and record their stats within the single database that defines the game's history. Owners' faith in the future prosperity of baseball as a spectator attraction made itself clear in Pittsburgh with the opening of Forbes Field in mid-1909, MLB's first concrete and steel stadium. 2 years later, the wooden Polo Grounds burst into flame and was replaced by an enduring model, one that would, half a century later, greet the Mets. By 1913, the steel-decked Polo Grounds welcomed the New York female Giants, led by pitcher, actress, and vaudevillian, and champion swimmer, Ida Schnall. In Brooklyn, owner Charles Ebbets replaced the parks of the 1890s with the beloved Ebbets Field. Meanwhile, the Yankees' 10-year lease on wooden Hilltop Park ran its course after the 1912 season, and homeless, they were compelled to rent the Polo Grounds from their hated rivals. The advent of the Federal League in 1914 and 15 provided an additional entrant in Brooklyn. The Tip Tops, however, named for the sliced bread baked by their owner, remember Tip Top bread? I sure do. And Wonder Bread, they were terrible. The Tip Tops, named for the sliced bread baked by their owner, played in the Dodgers' old home of Washington Park. No Feds team emerged in New York as a counterpart to the Giants or Yankees, though the league did have a franchise in Newark, the Newark Peppers. Why they were named the Peppers, I have no idea. Following the purchase of Babe Ruth from Boston, the new powerhouse Yanks became, in 1920, the first team to draw 1 million fans. The Bambino, who had set a new home run record with 29 in 1919, had hit only 9 of these at Fenway Park. In the prior year, in which he had led all batters with 11 four-baggers, none came at home. This is before the pesky pole and the shortened right field distance at Fenway. Fenway was like 520 feet away. So the Yankees owners, in acquiring Ruth, who went on to hit 54 in his first year in New York, may have been the first to display a knowledge of sabermetrics. In the early 1920s, the leased Polo Grounds was still home to the Yankees, and Ruth was said to have wept when he had to leave that park's short right field fence. But Yankee Stadium, an amphitheater built across the Harlem River, was in the offing for 1923. In this year, the World Series was brought to a national radio audience as the National Broadcasting Company aired the matchup between the Giants and Yankees, who won the first of their 27 championships. Might it be 28? We'll see tomorrow. As Manhattan's long-favored club, the Giants, faded, the Bombers of the Bronx ascended, welcoming Lou Gehrig and Joe DiMaggio, and a bit later, Yogi Berra, Whitey Ford, and Mickey Mantle. In 1935, MLB staged its first night game. 3 years later, in the first contest under the lights at Ebbets Field, Johnny Vandermeer of the Reds threw his second consecutive no-hitter. Night baseball was born of the Depression, though it had been a dream since the first attempt in 1880. Like radio, it permitted working men and women to enjoy big league baseball through hard times. In 1941, President Franklin D. Roosevelt issued Executive Order 8802, banning discrimination in the defense industries during World War II. Meanwhile, Jackie Robinson left UCLA short of graduation to play pro football in Hawaii. And Brooklyn, his ultimate destination, lost to the Yankees in the World Series, as they would in their next 4 tries. After the 1942 season, the Dodgers hired Branch Rickey, long attached to the St. Louis Cardinals, as their new general manager. Despite a pennant in 1941 and a second-place finish the next year, Rickey saw a Dodger team that was old, with a roster about to be depleted by military service. He had longed to integrate a team, but in St. Louis, with its tradition of segregated seating and across the river, race riots, he knew that such a move was out of the question. In October 1945, he signed Robinson to a contract with Montreal. On April 15, 1947, Jackie Robinson made his debut at Ebbets Field, playing first base. He would shift to second base in 1948 and third base in the mid-1950s. At last, baseball was truly the game for all America. Black pitcher Dan Bankhead joined the Dodgers later in 1947. Roy Campanella and Don Newcomb would arrive soon, and so would Monty Irvin with the Giants. The Yankees would be slow to integrate, waiting to bring up Elston Howard from the minors until 1955. While baseball in New York was televised in the late 1940s, the first nationally televised MLB games were the 3 games of the National League playoff of 1951, which culminated in the Bobby Thompson home run and another crushing defeat for the Dodgers, who had lost to the Phillies on the final day in 1950. How are the Phillies doing right now? We can't know. The first national TV broadcast of a World Series came days later, as the Giants faced the Yankees and lost, as Casey Stengel's men won the 3rd of their 5 straight World Championships. In 1954, the Yankees finished second to Cleveland, which lost to the Giants in 4 straight World Series games, still famous for Willie Mays' back-to-the-infield grab of Vic Wertz's liner to deep center field in Game 1. But the big news, culturally, was the marriage of retired baseball star Joe DiMaggio to movie star Marilyn Monroe. Talk about love in baseball, if short-lived. In 1955, the Dodgers finally defeated the Yankees in the World Series, but Stengel's men reversed the outcome in the very next year, as Don Larson threw a perfect game. Robinson, who had been the hero of Game 6 with an extra inning hit that drove in the game's only run, knew that his body was betraying him. Unable to land the managing position he wished, he retired as a player, even though the Giants expressed an interest in signing him. In 1956, it's more intimate. In 1956, Ozzie Virgil joined the Giants, becoming the first player in MLB from the Dominican Republic. More than 1,000 have followed. While the percentage of African American players has diminished since a high of nearly 19% in 1975, the percentage of men in color in MLB has increased to nearly 39%, largely Hispanic. After Steve Loughman of Cuba in 1871 and Luis Castro of Colombia in 1902, baseball has slowly but surely welcomed outsiders in. In mid-season of 1957 came a shock to the city and to 10-year-old me. The Dodgers and Giants announced their intention to leave New York, transforming a city of 3 MLB franchises into a one-horse town. The Giants of Horace Stoneham at first seemed headed to Minneapolis-St. Paul, site of their AAA farm club, but then changed their destination to San Francisco when Walter O'Malley of the Dodgers selected Los Angeles. Let there be light. This is the way the joke goes. If Stalin, Hitler, and O'Malley are in a boat and you only have 2 bullets, who do you shoot? The answer, O'Malley twice. Advocates for Stoneham and O'Malley, as I now am, would later say that a regional pastime did not truly become national until those teams moved west. And the Colt 45s went to Houston, and the Boston/Milwaukee Braves went to Atlanta, and all of a sudden, baseball was everywhere. The National League's exit from New York for 1958 prompted Branch Rickey, formerly of the Dodgers, to announce formation of a new circuit, the Continental League, in large part to assure the National League's return to New York. This bluff prompted the established leagues to expand to 10 teams. The American League expanded first in 1961. Then in 1962, New York welcomed the Mets and pilot Casey Stengel, who had been let go by the Yankees after their loss in the 1960 World Series. They would play in the abandoned Polo Grounds before relocation to Flushing, site of the 1964 World's Fair. With these moves, MLB became transcontinental, and New York had a history of major league teams in each of its 5 boroughs. Love's Labor's lost, and Love's Labor's won. Thank you. I guess Steve will be asking me questions to which I will offer jaunty responses, but at some point, we will welcome audience contributions too. Thanks, Steve.
Do you want us to pick up the microphones?
Yes, please.
Yes, okay. We were going to rehearse, but as soon as John and I sat down, we started talking baseball. So I wasn't sure if I was supposed to pick up the microphone or not.
So much for the
Right.
So much for rehearsal. All right. There we go.
So,
Can you hear me now?
so the first time I saw John speak was at the 19th Century Baseball Conference in Cooperstown. And it was about 6 months into me becoming the state sports historian. And I'm not jealous of too many people's jobs because I think I have a very good job. And John was on.
You do.
I do. And John was on the panel talking about the birth of baseball cards. And I said, wow, there's an MLB historian. And I've been following him ever since 2019. So this is a thrill for me to get to share the stage with him. And thinking back to then, and you talk about flipping cards on your stoop. First of all, you have to explain to me what flipping cards means. Sorry, I'm a youngster. Easy now.
I believe the term for Steve is hopeless.
But I wanted to ask, when you're flipping cards, what was your favorite baseball card?
Oh, Jackie Robinson and Duke Snider. These two had pristine corners and were not endangered by flipping. If you won a card from a pal of yours, it might be a Wally Westlake, and you sure didn't want to give up a Robinson in exchange for that. So those were the two that were held close.
Do you still have those cards?
I do not.
No.
No, not only did my mother throw them out, but she threw out everybody else's cards. She also threw out my comic book collection. And though she is long in the grave, I cannot forgive her.
My mother did not throw out my baseball cards, but she delivered them to my house in a garbage bag. And I still have them in the basement somewhere, although I've been collecting baseball cards recently with my daughter. So she's...
Well, baseball and baseball cards are both marvelous devices for bridging the generational gap.
It is, and the current Allen and Ginter set is baseball, it's pop culture, and last year's set had cards that had dogs on them from the dog show. And so that's how we got into it, is we were trying to get all the dogs. We're still missing some.
Well, Allen and Ginter goes back to 1887, and there were a few cards earlier than that. And arguably, a baseball card might be a CDV, and thus a carte de visite, and thus issued for general distribution. So the first baseball cards might have been the Peck and Snyder, Brooklyn Atlantics, and Cincinnati Red Stockings of the 1860s. Yet I maintain that the first baseball card dates to 1844, and the Magnolia Ball Club, which issued tickets for its annual, what it imagined to be annual ball, and one card survives. And I paid a great deal of money for it.
Is that in your personal collection of baseball ephemera, memorabilia?
It is no longer, because someone offered me 10 times what I had paid for. And in the end, I am craven, just like the rest of you.
In your personal collection at home of baseball memorabilia, is there one piece that sticks out to you?
I do have a man cave of baseball books and artifacts and many things on the wall. But I maintain that things I spent $5 for or things I spent $5,000 for are, to me, of no moment. They're indistinguishable. I love them all. And to say, I love this one more than the others, I can't do it.
So growing up in Brooklyn, who was your favorite baseball player?
Well, it was Jackie Robinson. Now, Jackie Robinson, I identified with because when I was put in nursery school at age 2.5 or 3, and I still spoke German, the other kids made fun of me and tied me up. And I am told that when I returned home to my parents, I told them that I would cease to respond to them with any question addressed to me in either German or Polish, and would only respond to questions in English. So early on, I was going to be an American, damn it.
My grandfather has a similar story to yours. His parents came over from Ireland, and he grew up a Brooklyn Dodgers fan as well. His favorite player was Pee Wee Reese, and then he became a Mets fan. My father became a Mets fan, and now I'm a Mets fan, and my daughter is a Mets fan, I think.
Pee Wee Reese is an interesting example. His first name was Harold, and he was born in Louisville, I believe. And is there a soul today who knows why he was called Pee Wee? Marbles. Marbles. Nobody plays marbles anymore. I think I played marbles when I was a kid. But, you know, I had a discussion before we came in and before I started talking with someone who said that he hated the Ghost Runner, and was Commissioner Manfred more interested in marketing or in leaving his mark? And I said pretty much the latter. While marketing is not irrelevant, the idea that baseball is an unchanging game is bunk. It has changed systematically and in minute ways that have had remarkable influence on performance. An example would be the 1968 mound was 15 inches high, and in Dodger Stadium it might have been 3 feet high. And by rule, it was legislated down to 10 inches. So a 5-inch reduction in the height of the mound had a tremendous influence on 1969 run scoring and batting average both. Baseball is a wonderful game in part because it is so delicately balanced that we argue about the Ghost Runner, we argue about extra innings, we argue about automated strike calling,
The pitch clock.
clock, you name it. But baseball, the pitch clock has been in the rule book since 1902, right? The idea that baseball is only changing rapidly lately is because we're paying attention to it. That's it.
In talking about the modern game, and when we first started communicating about this event, and I asked you, and I'll ask it in front of everybody here, how much of the game do you consume today? Who do you watch? Maybe some of your favorite players from today's game? I won't ask you who's going to win the World Series.
No, as I said then, and will repeat to all of you, my crystal ball works only in reverse. I can tell you what happened, but not what will happen. I watch about 120 baseball games a year. Most of them the Mets, all the postseason, and the occasional Yankee game. You know, the Yankees and Red Sox series was pretty great. And the Yankees and Blue Jays series has been a bit of a dud to this point. But I love the game and will watch it even if I don't have a rooting interest.
I remember explaining this to somebody once, that I think baseball on television is the best thing to put on in the background because you don't have to pay attention until something exciting happens, but just the din, the noise of a baseball stadium is just very relaxing. I find it relaxing. I probably, like you, watch a lot of baseball. I'm sure my wife could attest to that, and a lot of Mets games. You've written a lot of books, and now your main focus has been your blog, which if you don't follow John's blog, I highly recommend it.
Our Game. Our Game is the name of the blog. So if you Google Our Game and John Thorn, you will get a story a week or more.
So
thank you. If you Google Our Game, you'll get a story a week since 2011. And sometimes more. So I think I've written the equivalent of 10 books
So,
now that I'm a miniaturist.
so what is your process for coming up with what you're going to write about? Because you write a lot. You're very prolific on your blog, and I think right now you're talking about the greatest baseball players you've never seen, I think is the series that you're running now. How do you come up with topics? What interests you, and how do you?
Sometimes I'll think of a series like Greatest Plays You Never Saw, which is what we've all seen Willie Mays' catch of Vic Wertz's liner in Game 1 of the 1954 World Series because it was captured on film. What about the games that were not captured on film, not captured on video, not even photographed? I was just emailing with Ken Burns yesterday and reminded him that if the American Revolution, which is going to debut in November, seems daunting because there are no videos and no pictures, remember what we did with the Merkel game? I think we had like 14 minutes in inning 2 of baseball with no image, no footage. That was a masterpiece, and I'm expecting the American Revolution to be likewise.
So we've been gearing up at the museum for the American Revolution, the 250th, and one of the topics that we talk about is continuing revolutions and Jackie Robinson. And one of the questions I want to ask you about Jackie Robinson is, do you think that Jackie Robinson and baseball integrated in Brooklyn, do you think that could have happened anywhere else, or do you think that New York was the only place that could happen?
In retrospect, it's easy to say only in New York. But I can't say that it wouldn't have happened in Detroit. I can't say that it wouldn't have happened in Cincinnati. I have no way of reconstructing that. You know what? I will tell you that I was communicating with a Times Union reporter this morning about the Hudson River League, not the baseball league, but the basketball league of 1909 through 12, and the influence of the Jews on basketball. By year 2000, there was not a single Jew in the NBA, yet Jews made the game possible for black players, and they gave way to black players, to Europeans in looking to buy a vowel, and a three-point shooter, right? So when we talk about Jackie Robinson, we talk about baseball and its welcoming ranges of outsiders. Now, we think of Joe DiMaggio as perhaps the first big Italian star, but he was preceded by Tony Lazzeri, and he was preceded by Ping Bodie, and he was preceded by Ed Abaticchio. So Italians were regarded as dimly as blacks and Jews were in their turns. So baseball has done it. Baseball has welcomed Americans into its game and thence into America.
So I got one more question for you, and then we'll open it up to the floor. I agree with your point that you made about when the Giants and the Dodgers moved to the West Coast. It really opened up the game for the whole country. Because if you looked at a map before they moved, you could draw a rectangle where all the teams were located, and it was the Northeast.
No team west of St. Louis.
But you personally, can you talk about what it felt when the Dodgers left Brooklyn and when you were without a team until the Mets came?
It was crushing, and yet I maintained boyish optimism that they were only on summer holiday, and any day now would return. So I continued to follow the Dodgers in Los Angeles and watch them in their World Series in '59 and watch them in their World Series in '63 and in '65 and '66. And it was not, and I'd seen many Mets games beginning in 1962. I actually attended a doubleheader that represented 2 of their 40 wins on a single day. But it was in a game that Sandy Koufax started against the Mets at Shea Stadium in 1965. And the Mets starter was a call-up named Frank McGraw, not yet nicknamed Tug. He was a starter when he came to the Mets. And I realized that in the middle of the 5th inning, I was not rooting for Koufax and the Dodgers, I was rooting for the Mets. And at that point, I became a Mets fan and remain so.
One more question, sorry, I lied. So as a Mets fan myself, we're going to take off our official historian hats of the MLB historian and the New York State historian. And my favorite Mets player, that's hard. So I would say Doc Gooden because when I was a child, my nickname that my parents gave me was Doc. Nobody calls me that anymore. I met Doc Gooden in Cooperstown. I used to live just outside of Cooperstown for a couple of years, and I met Doc Gooden. He was signing autographs outside CVS, and my wife said, tell him your nickname. And so I said, oh, Mr. Gooden, as a child, my nickname was Doc. And he just looked up from side of my hat and he said, why'd they stop? So my last question is, who's your favorite Mets player of all time?
My favorite Mets player is not Mike Piazza. It's not Tom Seaver. I'm thinking Elio Chacon and Yola Tango.
Yola Tango.
Now, many of you know that story perfectly well. And it's Richie Ashburn in center field for the 62 Mets and Elio Chacon at shortstop. And Ashburn yelling, I've got it, I've got it. And what he needed to yell out was Yola Tango. Because Chacon crashed into him, the ball dropped, and this is the eponymous Met play.
All right, so now we'll open the floor to questions. They're going to walk around with microphones, I believe. So raise your hands if you have questions. Oh.
I just had a question about Cap Anson. What are your thoughts on him? Do you blame him for segregation in baseball?
Oh, no.
You think he has 3,000 hits?
Well, the question was, do you blame Cap Anson for the segregation of baseball? And secondarily, do you think he got 3,000 hits? There's no question in my mind that he has 3,000 hits. There's also no question in my mind that racial animus in America was broad-based, and to ascribe baseball segregation to Cap Anson alone, or even primarily, is to violate our sense of the 1880s.
Question.
Hi, John. Being a Brooklyn Dodger fan, have you forgiven O'Malley yet, knowing that he was actually trying to keep the Dodgers in Brooklyn, but the city wouldn't let him?
I have forgiven O'Malley, not because of any reworking of the Brooklyn tale, whether it involves Buckminster Fuller or Robert Moses. It's that he made baseball transcontinental. As I said in the talk, that baseball was not the national pastime when there was no team west of St. Louis. So I have not only forgiven Walter O'Malley, I now see him as the Johnny Appleseed of baseball.
Question over here.
Hi, another long-suffering Mets fan.
Join the club.
Been to Shea Stadium many times, been to Citi Field many times. I've walked the base paths out in Citi Field where they have the old Shea Stadium home plate. I was just wondering if you were aware of other spots in the 5 boroughs where you can visit. Are there old vestiges of the old ballparks that you can still visit or at least spot down there?
Well, in Staten Island, the St. George team was the Yankees' single A or double A team very recently. And St. George was, in fact, the site of the 1886 and 87 Mets. And Erastus Wyman was their owner, and he built a community 20 miles away called Aristena, which was home to the Buffalo Bill Wild West show. More than you cared to know.
This is not a New York question, but I'm a Chicago White Sox fan. And last year we were abysmally terrible and are called by many the worst team in Major League Baseball history. I'm curious if you have any thoughts or arguments to make about what team is the worst single season team in Major League Baseball
Well,
history.
it's not the White Sox, and it's not even the Mets of 1962, who won 40 games and lost 120. It is the Cleveland Spiders of 1899, who won 20 games, I believe, and lost 134. And I believe the Cleveland fans were so disinclined to see them that the Spiders had to finish the second half of their season entirely on the road.
Just to kind of ask a similar question from earlier about O'Malley and Robert Moses not being able to agree on an Atlantic Yard site for a new stadium for the Brooklyn Dodgers. Suppose they had and the Dodgers were able to stay in Brooklyn and play where the Barclays Center is now. What do you think the landscape of MLB would look like today?
I think Stoneham and the Giants were determined to leave. They had a decrepit ballpark, and their attendance was dropping year by year from their World Series run of 54 to even less than 55 and less than 56 and less than 57. The Giants were gone. Do I think that they had to have a road club that they had to have a visiting club on the West Coast? Sure. Do I think that O'Malley did the right thing in abandoning Brooklyn? Yes.
So, I have a question. I love baseball quotes. Back here. Love baseball quotes. And I'm over in the middle back here. Middle back. Stand up. There you go. I'll stand up. Here I am.
There.
Can you see me? I don't know. Let there be light.
That looks just like you.
Amazing, amazing. So I love baseball quotes. I follow baseball quotes, thousands of them. Do you have an all-time funny favorite baseball player? I mean, there's the Yogis and the Caseys of the world, but is there somebody you think of when you think of funny baseball players?
Jim Bouton. Jim Bouton was my friend.
Yeah.
And he and Lenny Schechter wrote what is the greatest of all baseball books, apart from books of baseball history. Now, but I don't rank my own in any such category, but I think that in baseball history, the best book is Larry Ritter's The Glory of Their Times. And for all other baseball books, it's Bouton's Ball Four.
Over here. Yep.
So you talked about how baseball has evolved and changed over the years. How do we compare today's greatest in the game they're playing to some of the historical figures that we all know and love?
Well, you can't compare absolute stats. So you can't compare Cal Raleigh's 60 homers and Babe Ruth's 60 homers. But what you can do is you can normalize for averages. And normalizing averages means not only normalizing to the era in which you played or the year in which you played, but also to your home park. So that you can have relative batting average, you can have relative OPS, you can have relative on base, you can have relative slugging. Anything expressed as an average can be compared to league average. So, for example, a favorite case. Old timers used to say that Bill Terry hit 401 in the National League in 1930, and we would never see such a feat ever again. When Bill Terry hit 301 in 1930, his stat normalized to a league average of what was 313 was about the same as Carl Yastrzemski's 301, leading the American League in 1968. So if one is 35% above average and the other is 33% above average, you can see that their absolute numbers, even though they're 100 decimal points apart, are quite comparable.
Thank you.
Over here.
What's your favorite current player?
I'm sorry, can you say that for me again, please?
What's your favorite current player?
My favorite current player? Mike Trout. Mike Trout is the greatest player I have ever seen, short of Barry Bonds.
What about Shohei Ohtani?
Ohtani is freakishly good. And one can compare him to Babe Ruth using, again, normalized averages. Don't look at the home run totals, don't look at the RBI totals. The fact that he is a pitcher and an outfielder and most times a DH makes him sensational. And if Ohtani is not the greatest player ever, Mike Trout is.
I guess you never saw Willie Mays.
I never saw, well, I did see Willie Mays plenty. And Mays was a five-tool player, but so was Trout. So was Trout. Greatest center fielder I ever saw was not Willie Mays, it was Jim Edmondson.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of being able to go back on a ball and make a catch that no one could believe. Let me get to you, sir. Can you, do you have a mic?
Go ahead.
We'll do a question?
We'll do him, and then we'll get
And
some
then
of these
we'll walk
guys
him
in the
right down?
front.
Yes, please.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for coming to Albany, New York. It's been a pleasure. And I do have a question about.
Thank you for saying thank you.
I have a
had to,
question
right?
about. There's been talk about expansion teams.
Yep.
Maybe two more in the near future. What are your beliefs? Should we have more teams, or because?
Yeah, I think 32 teams would be great, because then we could go to 4 divisions of 8 teams or 8 divisions of 4 teams. Right now, 30 with 15 in each league produces very odd results, very odd playoff rounds, 3 games, 5 games, 7 games. I'm all for 32 teams. Now, if you're going to ask me what those cities might be, I can't say because I work for Major League Baseball.
So, before your question, I don't work for Major League Baseball, but it relates to this talk. The Continental League, the only team that was proposed in the Continental League that didn't get a team eventually was Buffalo.
Buffalo.
So, as the New York State sports guy, I would advocate for Buffalo to get a Major League Baseball team.
Well, Buffalo would be great in a closed stadium.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. All right, let's get some questions down in front here.
Before you were asked about the integration and whether if Ranch Rickey hadn't done it, would it have happened? But wasn't Larry Doby integrating the American League that very shortly after?
Yes, very shortly after, and it has been claimed by Bill Veeck that he was going to buy the Phillies and field an all-black team, or at least field an integrated team. After William Cox, the owner, was indicted for gambling and banished from baseball. So the Phillies franchise came up for sale. And while we cannot verify Veck's story, it is possible that somebody else might have bumped off Ricky to be first. Ricky himself was terrified that the commission engineered by Fiorello LaGuardia, and I believe that the manuscript of LaGuardia's commission is right outside these doors, if you haven't seen it, that it's LaGuardia's commission that was going to force Ricky's hand, and that's why he had to sign Robinson to a Montreal contract before Robinson went to Havana. He was going to Havana, I believe, on November 1st, and the contract was signed October 23rd.
I'm a lifelong Mets fan also. I was on the
My
field.
commiserations.
Well, I was on the field in '69 when they beat the Cardinals and won the division. After the game, we were allowed on the field, and that was a special memory. I just want to say about the baseball cards, my mother threw out our comic book collection, so my brother ran over and grabbed our card collection, which was all in one box. He now has an entire room of his house, which has pieces of seats from the old Yankee Stadium, Ebbets Field, and Shea Stadium. And he's really
And here I was thinking that my mother had thrown everyone else's cards out. So, fine story. Thank you.
Oh, go right.
To follow up on the question about if baseball gets 32 teams, what are your thoughts on, they're talking about radically realigning the divisions and what are your thoughts on that?
I think geographic divisions have already been modified. We've had Houston moving from one league to another. We've had Milwaukee moving from one league to another. So I am unconcerned.
Now they're talking about something more radical with, let's say, the teams in the Northeast being together.
Well, I think the league structure is pretty much dead, American League and National League. So the idea of the Boston Red Sox and the New York Mets being in the same division, why not?
We got time for one more question. Two more questions. These two have been waiting patiently.
One question I've never gotten a good answer to. I hope you have it. How do you explain Nolan Ryan? Every other power pitcher at some point transitions to more of a finesse pitcher, and he pitched to the age that he pitched to, and they say he was throwing just as hard at the end of his career as he was.
Well, there are many pitchers who throw just as hard at the end as they did at the beginning. The
Right,
ball
but they don't
doesn't
pitch-
get there quite as quick.
They don't pitch to 45. I heard you. But seriously, any explanation as to why or how?
I think Ryan was a physical specimen of the sort we have not seen before, and he also developed a wicked curveball long after he left the Mets. So, if you look at Nolan Ryan, if you look at J.R. Richard, and you think, are they Tariq Skubal? Is that who they are today? I think they would dominate any league they were in at any time.
Now, this may be already on your blog, so forgive me. But in the greatest
But
moment...
you promised to read all of it.
Exactly. It's a good plug. But in the greatest moments we've never seen, do you think Babe called his shot?
Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. And the Babe's own postseason speech to the baseball writers revealed his sense of humor about it. If you look at the footage, you can pretty easily see that he is waving at the Cubs dugout. And why is he waving at the Cubs dugout? Because they had given the former Yankees shortstop Mark Koenig, who had performed marvelously for them in the last 60 days or 45 days, a half share or a quarter share And the Yankees were razzing the Cubs for being skinflints, cheapskates. And that's what that was about. So the idea that it became the called shot was ex post facto nonsense. Believe me, I have gone round and round and round about this, and I think the evidence that I have compiled is pretty strong.
So we got to end the questions there, but thank you, John, for this. This was tremendous.
Thank all of you for being such a wonderful audience and for being patient as I did my racehorse run through New York City history in baseball. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll say thank you one more time. If you have a moment and you want to complete our survey, please do. Thank you for coming, and I hope you come back again soon. Have a great evening. And good luck to the Yankees.